Let me ask you something real quick. Do you actually know where you rank financially for your age? Because the same net worth and income can mean two totally different things depending on where you have it in life. So, someone in their mid 20s with $100,000 is in a very different position than someone in their 50s with the exact same number. So, in this video, I'm going to walk you through the real numbers: median net worth, average net worth, median income, average income by age for both Canada and the US. No shame, no guessing, just real benchmarks so you can actually see where you stand. And as a quick note, if you're in your 20s, I really want you to stick around because watching how these numbers evolve by age might be the most valuable thing that you could see right now. Because time is the one asset older generations we can't get back. And if you stay disciplined and invest consistently and focus on peace over performance, I'm telling you, your future self is going to thank you. So there's a quote that I always come back to by Theodore Roosevelt: comparison is a thief of joy. And nowhere is that more true than with money, especially when people they start comparing without context. So before we start, I really just want to add a little bit more clarity. With Canadian numbers, they'll be in Canadian dollars. And with US numbers, they'll be in US dollars. Also, income, it's going to be measured in gross household income. So that's basically before taxes. And net worth is just simply your assets minus your liabilities. And lastly, I'm going to make sure that all sources are going to be on the screen for your reference. All right, so let's just get right into it. Net worth and income in your 30s and early 40s for both Canada and the US. So your 30s and early 40s is where your money starts to tell the truth. This is the stage where early decisions they begin to show up on paper and where the gap between just doing okay and actually building wealth it starts to widen. So let's start with Canada. For Canadians in their 30s to early 40s, this is what the data shows. The median net worth is around 300,000 to 350,000. Now, this is in the middle of the pack. Half of the households are above this and half are below. Now, the average net worth is closer to about 600,000 to 700,000. Now, this number is higher for a reason because it includes homeowners who bought earlier, dual income households, and even people who've had time for equity investments to grow over time. And it also gets pulled up higher by very high net worth households at the top. That's why the median is usually the better number to compare yourself against, because this reflects what's actually typical and not the extremes. Now let's layer in income, because the median household income for Canadians in their 30s to early 40s is roughly 75,000 to 85,000. This is what most households are actually earning before taxes. Now, the average household income is closer to 95,000 to 105,000. Now, here's the important part that you need to understand. A lot of people at this age range, they feel behind, even when they're technically around the median. Now, why is that? That's because this is the peak pressure season in life. People take on mortgages, they have kids, they need daycare, even rising lifestyle costs in general and career expectations. So, feeling tight here, it's actually quite normal and even with decent numbers. So look, if you feel behind at this stage, here's a truth that most people they never hear. Being behind in your 30s or even your early 40s usually isn't about income. It's actually about timing. And honestly, timing is something that can still change at this stage in your life. Now, let's zoom out for a second and take a look at the US. The median household net worth for Americans ages 30 to 44 is around 135,000 to 150,000. Now, that's lower than Canada, mostly due to less home equity and even more consumer debt earlier on. Now, the average net worth is roughly 450,000 to 500,000. Now, that's pulled higher by stronger equity markets and even retirement accounts. Now, when it comes to the median household income, that sits at about 75,000, with an average household income closer to 100,000. It's a similar income picture to Canada, but very different balance sheets underneath. Now, here's what I want you to understand. If you're in this age range, your 30s and early 40s, they're not about getting rich. It's actually about direction. This is when home equity it starts to matter. Retirement accounts finally start showing progress, and habits and behaviors compound for better or for worse. Now, here's the quiet truth. If you're around the median here, you're not failing. You're normal. But here's what matters most at this stage. It isn't necessarily about the numbers that you're seeing. It's more about whether your net worth is moving forward year after year. So focus on progress, not just position. And that's it. You just want to make sure that you're heading in the right direction. Now, here's where things get interesting because in your 40s and early 50s, the numbers, they don't just grow, they actually start to separate. So let's take a look at that next. Net worth and income in your 40s and early 50s for both Canada and the US. Your 40s and early 50s are where the gap becomes obvious. Honestly, this is the stage where two people with similar incomes can end up in completely different financial positions based on what they did or didn't do in the decades before. So, for Canadians in their 40s to early 50s, the median net worth is around 550,000 to 650,000. This is the true midpoint. Half of the households are above this and half are below. And again, this is the number that matters the most for comparison. Now, the average net worth is closer to 1.1 million to 1.3 million. And just like before, this number is higher for a reason because it includes longtime home owners with significant equity, dual income households at peak earning years, and investment portfolios that have had time to compound over long periods of time. And it's also pulled upwards by very high net worth households, like I mentioned earlier. So if you're comparing yourself, always use the median because the average is useful for understanding the system, not yourself. Now let's talk income because the median household income for Canadians is roughly 85,000 to 95,000 before taxes. This is what most households are actually earning. Now, the average household income is closer to 110,000 to 125,000. So incomes are higher than in your 30s, but so are your responsibilities. And that's what matters because this is where lifestyle decisions, they really start to get locked in. Now, let's look at the US. The median net worth is around 250,000 to 300,000. Now, that's lower than Canada, again, largely due to less home equity on average and higher long-term consumer debt. Now, the average net worth is roughly 1.1 million to 1.2 million. This number is heavily influenced by stock market exposure, retirement account balances, and business equity at the top end. Now, once again, the median is the most useful number for self-comparison. So now in terms of median household incomes for Americans in their 40s to early 50s, it's about 90,000, with an average household income closer to 120,000. So income growth is real here, but wealth outcomes are diverging really, really fast. So same income, very different balance sheets and very different outcomes. Now, if you're in your 40s or early 50s and feeling that pressure, that's not random. This is the decade of peak expectations. Careers, they demand more. Mortgages, they start to accelerate. Kids generally start costing more. And for a lot of people, aging parents start entering the picture. So if things start to feel heavier here, that's normal. And here's the key thing that you need to remember. If you're around the median at this age, you're not failing. But this is where the direction matters the most. Because by your late 40s and early 50s, there's less room for drift. See, home equity is either working for you or it isn't. Retirement accounts are either having momentum or they don't. And money habits, good or bad, they're mostly locked in. So if you feel behind here, it doesn't mean that you're broken. It just means clarity matters more than ever, especially at this stage. And here's where the line really starts to get drawn. Because once you move into your 50s and early 60s, the conversation it starts to drift from building to protecting. But before we get into the numbers for your 50s to early 60s, if this video is actually helping you see where you stand with your money a little more clearly, do me a quick favor, tap subscribe or even hit the like button if you haven't already. It's completely free, literally takes a second, and it helps this channel reach more people who are trying to build real wealth the slow, steady, and intentional way. So to thank you, there's two cats just playing Jedi mind tricks on each other. Because money, it can feel the same way, confusing, messy, until you actually see the numbers clearly. I really appreciate you being here. Let's get back to it. Net worth and income in your 50s and early 60s in both Canada and the US. Your 50s and early 60s is where the game changes. Money stops being theoretical and actually starts becoming real life. Because now the question isn't how fast am I growing? It's actually, am I ready? So for Canadians in their 50s to early 60s, here's what the data actually shows. The median net worth is around 750,000 to 825,000. This is the midpoint. Half of the households are above this and half are below. And just like before, this is the number that gives you the most clarity for comparison. Now, the average net worth is closer to 1.4 million to 1.6 million. This number is higher because it includes paid off homes, decades of compounding, business owners, and the very high net worth households at the top, which is exactly why the median remains the better reference point. Now, let's layer in income because the median household income for Canadians ages 55 to 64 is roughly 75,000 to 85,000. You'll notice something really interesting here. Income often plateaus at this stage, even though net worth it continues to rise. Now the average household income is closer to 100,000 to 115,000. So your earnings may not be accelerating anymore, but those assets are doing more of the heavy lifting for you. Now let's take a look at the US. The median household net worth is around 400,000 to 450,000. Now that's lower than Canada, largely driven by healthcare costs, higher debt persistence, and even less universal home equity coverage. Now the average net worth is roughly about 1.6 million to 1.8 million. Once again, this number is pulled higher by equity markets, retirement accounts, and even business ownership at the very top. But for comparison purposes, the median is always going to be the grounded benchmark. Now, in terms of median household income, it's around 70,000 to 80,000 for Americans. Now, the average household income is closer to 110,000 to 120,000. So just like in Canada, income no longer becomes the main driver here. Your net worth is. Here's what matters when you're in your 50s to early 60s. This is a transition decade. If you're near the median here, you're not late. You're actually typical. At this stage, wealth isn't built by acceleration anymore. It's built by protection, reducing risk, avoiding big mistakes, and letting assets do more of the work. And here's the honest truth most people actually miss. If your net worth is still moving forward, even slowly, you're doing okay. Because at this stage, avoiding losses matters more than chasing big wins. Now, here's the final shift. Because once you move into your mid 60s and beyond, the focus changes again. It's no longer about building or protecting. It's actually more about using what you've built. So, all right, let's look into that next. Net worth and income in your late 60s and beyond for both Canada and the US. Your late 60s and beyond is where your scorecard finally changes. It's no longer about building or even protecting. This is where wealth becomes usable. So let's look at the numbers and more importantly, what they actually mean at this stage in life. So for Canadians in their late 60s and beyond, here's what the data shows. The median net worth is around 800,000 to 900,000. And just like in the previous chapters, this is the number that matters the most for your comparison. Now, the average net worth is closer to 1.2 million to about 1.4 million. Now, here's something really important that I want you to notice. Unlike earlier decades, the average actually starts to flatten or even decline at this stage. Now, why is that? It's actually because people are doing exactly what this decade is designed for, using their wealth, spending down assets, downsizing their homes, and even drawing from their retirement accounts. Now, lastly, let's layer in income. The median household income is roughly 55,000 to 65,000, and the average household income is closer to 75,000 to 85,000. Now, income is lower here by design, right? Most households are no longer relying on work income. They're relying on pensions, government benefits, and even investment income. And that's the shift. So for the US, the median net worth is around 265,000 to 300,000. Now that's lower than Canada, but it's largely driven by healthcare costs, higher out-of-pocket expenses, and less universal pension coverage. Now the average net worth is roughly 1.1 million to 1.3 million. And again, this number is pulled up by stronger equity markets, business ownership, and high net worth households at the top. And just like before, the median is still the number that matters the most here. Now, the median household income is around 50,000 to 60,000, and the average household income is closer to 80,000 to 90,000. And just like Canada, your income is no longer the main driver here. Your assets are. So here's what I want you to understand when you're in your late 60s and beyond. This stage isn't about growth anymore, it's about sustainability. And at this point, your earning years are mostly behind you, and your spending patterns matter more than your returns, and your peace matters more than performance. And if you're near the median, you're not behind, you've arrived. And if you're below that, that doesn't mean failure, it just means life happened. But what matters most isn't maximizing, it's making sure that what you've built can support you comfortably, predictably, and with little stress. So remember, wealth doesn't just grow because people earn more. It grows because their decisions line up with their stage in life. You can see that in every single age bracket from your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and even beyond. The number moves, but the underlying pattern doesn't. It's not about hitting some perfect number for your age. It's about whether your net worth is moving forward and whether your income is actually supporting that direction. This is the game where median matters more than averages, and net worth matters more than your income, and clarity matters more than comparison. So that's the difference between people who feel pressure at every single stage and the people who understand how the seasons in their life actually works. See, once you start looking at money this way, by age, by context, by direction, everything around you, it starts to make a lot more sense. Here's what I wish someone had told me earlier in my life. The information, it's always been there. Most people just never see it laid out with context because everything around us, it tells us to compare our incomes, compare our lifestyles, and even compare to someone else's timeline. You can't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20, especially when it comes to investing, because real wealth, it doesn't work that way. It moves slower. It shows up differently at every single age, and it's built quietly in your habits, in your discipline, and in the systems that you stick with year after year after year. So if this video has really helped you understand where you actually stand financially for your age, go watch this next. The net worth and income of the top 1%, 5%, 10%, and 25% in both Canada and the US. So in this video, I break down where each wealth bracket really begins and why earning more doesn't always mean that you're building real wealth, especially once you see how net worth and income separate. And once that clicks, you start seeing money in a whole different light. Thanks so much for watching. Stay humble, stay in the black, and I'll see you in the next one.